Well, we've reached a milestone. We made it past the first Dinner with Side of Culture podcast. Moving on to episode 2, and we added a new touch this week. Dinner with Side of Culture got a little bit more interesting as we brought in tacos from our buddy Nick Benchoff and Bandito Burrito, bringing his version of Taco Tuesdays food truck style to Mendenhall, and in combination with Firehouse Grocery and College Hill. What'd you think about those tacos, Jack?
Delicious. I'm still licking my chops. And we just enjoyed a great dinner, and now we're going to have a great conversation in that side of culture.
So as you know, this podcast is based on an actual event. And this week, we actually just had one of those events, a Dinner with Side of Culture event. It was at the Green Bean Coffee Shop downtown, and we did a screening of Beautiful Losers. And the guests that we have on tonight, they were all in attendance. The different cool and creative contributions that they've brought to Greensboro. We also are going to be able to hear their perspective in our own real life version of Beautiful Losers here in Greensboro. So it's really interesting to have Caleb Smallwood. Caleb is a photographer, and he was a chef here in Greensboro, and he's an avid food lover and looks at food for its benefits in health and its ability to nurture you and what it can contribute to our culture. And I really had contributed some interesting projects in Greensboro, such as Dance from Above, which Dance from Above is actually hosted in one of these interesting venues. It's really adding to what's making Greensboro more interesting. It's in a space called The Crown, which is actually in the 3rd floor of the Carolina Theater. It's a reclaimed space there that's now been put to use. And Carolina Theater, one of the oldest theaters in North Carolina, and it just shows that we can constantly reinvent ourselves. And Jeff Beck had his own art studio and shop called Menace Inc. Studios, and he's brought events to us and many over the years, and most recently Ultimate Painting. So I look forward to discussing all these things and introducing these two really cool guys. Our third guest, she had to postpone, and she's going to be on next week. Rebecca Harrelson, co-director of Matter Factory and also a writer with her new blog, Sidewalk Stories. So keep up and be ready for next week to hear from Rebecca. And we also are going to have Carly Dempsey on from events and marketing coordinator for Natty Greens, and also a native to Greensboro that's now moved back and is now a young professional and contributing citizen. So Dinner with a Side of Culture, taking it from real life to podcast form and keeping the conversation going. So we'll get started. Now I'll pass the mic to Caleb Smallwood and let him tell you a little bit about himself in his own words.
Caleb Smallwood. It's good to be back with a Dinner Inside of Culture. Was involved a few months back at the 512 Art Collective in High Point as the featured chef of the evening. It's good to see that it's still kicking and rolling. Right now, I'm currently a photojournalism student at Randolph Community College, and my background is, I would say, fine dining, French bistro food, and came to Greensboro, helped start up a mobile kitchen at an established seafood grill, and took on a little molecular gastronomy. This year I kind of look forward to moving my ventures somewhere out west later part in the year and seeing where that takes me.
So Caleb, you talked about your experience with French bistro and having a fine dining background. How do you feel that has translated into your life here in Greensboro? Do you feel like there is a community here that you can sustain that portion of your life?
Well, I would say my current transition to the photography world would speak as far as that longevity is concerned in Greensboro. I kind of had high hopes moving to a more sustained, bigger city, moving down off the mountain. It's just a different clientele and a different class of restaurants. There's a multitude of work that goes into running a either farm-to-table style restaurant or just what you would consider a traditional fine dining restaurant. Not to say there aren't a couple of gyms here in Greensboro that still put in some good work and put in a lot of heart and good technique into their food, but at the end of the day, most of these places still get most of their product off the same trucks. And so really, if you're using the same product, you can only dress it up so many ways. and the quality never really changes. I mean, you can have a sauce taste better than another sauce, but at the end of the day, you're still getting the same nutrients from place A to place B. A lot of time that's a lack of nutrients. Stuff's old, it's been stored forever, it's been transported halfway across the world before most of these places cook with it. It's just a different style of prep. Most places in Greensboro do a sort of afternoon, evening shift for the back of the house, which would consist of getting there post-lunch, prepping for a couple hours directly before service, working straight into service, busting down, closing down, cleaning up, going home. Whereas where I learned to cook and gained my most experience, you got there early in the day and you went to farmers markets or farms and you picked out the best stuff. You spent the morning writing new menus and going over fresh product and experimentation and taste testing, and by lunchtime you've developed your daily menu or your couple day or weekly goals, and then you get a little downtime before service. Not to say that your day is easy and slow by any means, but the attention goes in the right places. And then your service, you're not worried about the numbers. You're not worrying about crowding 150 people into your restaurant, flipping tables over and over. You put your money in your food. Your food makes some money back. Your wine, your alcohol sales, they take care of a lot of your profit. And your front of the house gets taken care of. Your back of the house is able to earn what they're supposed to. Here it's fighting for scraps, and you're called a chef at a lot of places, but you're getting paid like you're flipping burgers. So it's hard to feel like you have any respect in the community you live when to most people that's kind of all you are, is just somebody with an apron on flipping burgers because you couldn't get any other sort of job, not something that you worked 60 hours a week or 50 hours a week or even 40 hours a week on a hot line for the past 5-10 years. It's one of the hardest industries to work in, and I don't know, next to roofing I did for a little bit, I'd say it's probably the toughest thing I've ever done for extended periods of time. And there's a lot of people that need to be applauded in that sort of commitment and dedication. And here in Greensboro, I don't really see it shining through too much. I see a lot of overachieving. I'm not a huge fan of the multi-restaurant model. I really feel like people should just put a lot of time and energy into one thing and really just continually get back through that one establishment or couple establishments. I feel like at a point you're just kind of, you're just going for profit, and I think it takes away from, at the end of the day, why you got into the restaurant business to begin with.
I look forward to exploring more into that topic later on. Thank you.
Very nice, very nice. Jeff Beck.
All right. Hey, guys. My name's Jeff Beck. I'm a local artist here in Greensboro. I've kind of had my hands in a lot of things in Greensboro over the past year or so. Painted a couple murals here in Greensboro. I also ran Menacing Studios, an art gallery and vinyl toy shop down in off of Elam in Common Grounds Coffee Shop. And currently now I'm the event coordinator for Ultimate Painting Greensboro, a painting competition where we have 12 artists paint against each other for 3 rounds, and the audience votes the winner for the night. And we have six of those events, and at the end in June for the 7th event, all 6 artists come back to compete for Greensboro City Championship. So that's kind of what I got going on now. But I'm also kind of looking forward to this grant that I got out of APHIS in Winston to do a sculptural project throughout the year that I'll be kind of getting everything ready for in August to have a show, and then we're going to take the sculptures and kind of just place them in random spots in Winston. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to this year.
So Jeff, the Ultimate Painting Competition was definitely something that is unique. And is it something that you experienced somewhere else or found out about it from happening in another city, or how did it come to Greensboro, I guess, and how did you get involved with it?
Well, the painting competition is kind of something I've always wanted to do and have here in Greensboro. There's another kind of competition called Secret Walls out there that 2 artists have it's like a 8x8 wall to paint on, and all they get is black. They get black markers or black paint, and the artists just kind of battle head to head for the night, and it's got the DJs and drinks and food, and I just thought that kind of atmosphere always intrigued me, and always wished something like that would come here to Greensboro. And I think I was cruising on the internet one day and saw something for Ultimate Painting. They're actually a couple of guys out of Canada. That's where it all kind of originated from. And they were doing really well in Canada, so they wanted to start kind of branching out into other cities and just making it this. I always tell people it's kind of like American Idol. It's kind of like American Idol, but with paint. And they were looking for people to kind of head up these different cities doing Ultimate Painting. So I kind of applied to them, kind of gave them a background of what I was doing here in Greensboro and just kind of a background on Greensboro in general. And they contacted me and said they were interested in what I was doing and kind of interested in the city of Greensboro, because I was telling them about how, we have a pretty good art community here in Greensboro. So it kind of just went from that. I talked to them off and on for a couple of months, and then just decided to go for it. And it was one of the only competitions like that in North Carolina. But now I think there's going to be one in Raleigh popping up here in the next few weeks or something like that. But it was just something that always intrigued me, that whole vibe of just getting up there, artists having fun, painting, just having, it's not like a static art gallery. You're not just going in there being quiet looking at art. It's about the fun, energetic side of art.
Yeah. And so anybody can sign up and show up to compete?
Yeah, if you go to ultimatepainting.com/apply, there's a place for any artist can apply. There's an application process. You have to put up a couple of images of your work, and we just kind of look through the applicants and see who we want to have at that event, and just we always try to get like a mixture of different painters. We don't want to have all artists that just paint still life or something like that. We try to keep it mixed up so there's something for everybody.
And I have to admit, I've missed both of them, but does it get pretty lively? I mean, does the crowd get into it?
Oh, yeah.
The spectators? I mean,
yeah. This
heckling going on or anything?
Not really heckling, but everybody kind of respects the artist, and the artists know that it's not like a cutthroat competition. They're there to have fun.
Yeah.
And at the last Ultimate Painting, we had a couple of people there they were dancing and just having a really good time, and that kind of stuff just brought the energy up even further, and it made me more excited about the event too, just to see people having fun and not just kind of being quiet and standing in a corner.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome event. I've been to both of them, and I think it's really interesting because you talk about secret walls, and that's something you and I have discussed, and then an event that Caleb has also been involved in, Dance from Above. I think that you think about Ultimate Painting and Dance from Above and the way they combine music and art. Do you all both think that that's kind of the strategy that we're going to have to take in Greensboro to get people to kind of give them a multifaceted event that allows them to come and have fun and just enjoy themselves, but at the same time they're being exposed to culture, and it's in a unique event format that they may not be used to? Do you all feel like that's the path we're going to have to take, or do you see that that's a whole different form in itself?
I feel like Greensboro has a bad habit of the blind leading the blind as far as night culture and art culture and anything of that matter goes. So I feel like one of the biggest hurdles in getting something like the Ultimate Painting or Dance from Above off the ground is letting people know that there's more than just the traditional downtown nightlife. There's little pockets in all of these areas that there's a lot of culture, and I feel like that's something that, coming from a place, living in the Boone area in the mountains for a while, culture seemed to be a little more important up that way, and moving back down, it seemed like people just didn't really know what they were doing. They worked a 9 to 5, and they go out at night, have some drinks, have some fun, but there wasn't a whole lot of the thought into much more about what they were doing with themselves. And I feel like it takes events where people can come and see artists, especially, be inspired and be willing to put themselves out there. And I attended the last Ultimate Painting and shot some video, and it was really cool to start looking back at some of the footage and to see people from all walks of life just be super excited about all types of painters stuff. Some skill levels were super trained, and others you could tell were just more freeform. And to a kid's eye, especially, there's a lot of families there. Kids look at it all, it's all just bright eye, and that sort of eye of innocence is a pretty cool thing to see. But that's what inspires people, and like Jeff said, people were dancing, having fun, and I couldn't tell you how many people I had to shove elbows with to actually get some footage, because everybody else was eating the footage up themselves. I mean, there's a couple other photographers there. There were people all out with their cell phones, like really appreciating what the people were doing. And it's nice to see that at the Dance from Above events too. I mean, of course, you get some people coming just to dance, for sure. You get some people coming just because they recognize one or two of the artists from out of town that have been brought in, music-wise. But it's nice as a visual artist to catch people just on the downtime. They're just off looking at and appreciating art, somebody else's hard work and just dedication to their craft. And it's a good thing to see, because people walk away from that with a different feeling. They somebody might be holding boxes of negatives in their basement that they never really thought about showing, and they see some weird ass art on the wall, and they're like, man, if that guy can show that, I can show my stuff, So then they might get back in a community college somewhere and, put themselves through a school and facility where they get access to a bunch of stuff they can't afford, and, make something of their newfound career. But it's just one thing spawns another, and I feel like these sort of events, it might not touch everybody that attends, but there's a selected few that I think see the deeper meaning behind these sort of events that aren't just kind of club-oriented, recreational.
Yeah, and I've kind of noticed in Greensboro that it's a little difficult to get people out to things that are different than what they're used to, and that not just with Ultimate Painting, but some of the art shows that we've put on that may have been a little different than what you're kind of used to. And like Caleb was saying, there's so much more out there that people, I don't know if I don't think they're afraid to try it out, but it's just like, oh, it's not the norm, so we're going to stick with, going downtown and checking out an art show and just kind of keep it like that. But that has been kind of an uphill battle, is just trying to teach people kind of what Ultimate Painting is. And like with this one, there were more people at, which was great, and there was a wide range of ages, from kids to, I mean, I've seen some senior citizens out there just kind of enjoying the music and the art and everything. But just that's kind of one thing I would wish that people in Greensboro would kind of get a different mindset to, is to try something different. And just because it's not the normal downtown nightlife kind of thing, just give these up. There's so many cool things going on that a lot of people don't even know about, because maybe they just don't want to try it out. So that's kind of my thing.
One, kind of cool observation is that going to both Dance from Above and Ultimate Painting, I saw a completely different group of people at Ultimate Painting than I saw at Dance from Above. So it's really interesting to think that we're able to compound these together, because now you think that was your second Ultimate Painting. How many Dance from Aboves have you all done so far? Six Dance from Aboves have all been really well attended. You all are not only creating an event that has an admission charge, which has been difficult in Greensboro, but you're also doing it in a venue that is relatively unknown and new, which is really interesting. And kind of think about what I can't remember if it was Caleb or Jeff said, that sometimes people only look at downtown and they don't really think about what else is out there. But Jeff, you actually had a store in one of those pockets, the Walker Elam area, commonly known as the Corner here locally. And tell us a little bit about that and kind of where that's transpired, and kind of your feelings about all of that.
All right. Yeah, the studio, or the art gallery, was called Menacing Studios, and it was kind of born out of when I first really got into art. I got into painting, but then I just, as an artist does, doing a lot of research online, and then I found this culture of people who customized like blank vinyl toys and things like that, and it just caught my attention. And as soon as I checked out some other artists and just kind of did some research on it, it was kind of the transition I went to from painting canvas to customizing vinyl toys. And that was just a little niche that really struck with me. And you've got the customizers that do it, but you've also got companies like Kid Robot that produce art toys and sell them as collectibles and actual art pieces. So that whole world intrigued me, and there wasn't really anything around here like it. So if I wanted some of these cool looking toys, I had to go online and pay shipping and deal with all that kind of stuff. So I was just like, why not try it here? So I did. I got with Dusty at Common Grounds Coffee Shop there on Elam, and he had a space in the back that he wasn't using. So I come in and kind of tore some walls down and threw up some paint and put some shelving in and just kind of went for it. Opened up, just got a big shipment of vinyl toys to have in there to sell, kind of like Kid Robot, and put some art up on the wall. I really wanted to focus on like lowbrow urban art because I didn't feel like there was a really big place to display that kind of artwork around here. It's a lot of, I mean, not knocking it, but there's a lot of still life, you know, figure painting, that kind of fine art stuff. There's so many galleries like that, and I wanted to give the artists that kind of did the lowbrow urban style artwork a place to display their artwork. And I started that back in January of 2014 and kind of we tried to do a show every month there at the shop, different themes, you know, getting people in to the shows, and just rotated the artwork out monthly, and had some different events where there was like a special limited edition toy that was coming out, so we would do like a release party and things like that. And it was pretty well accepted, not as much as I had hoped. Again, it was kind of something new to the area. Not a lot of people knew what it was. I found myself having to explain what vinyl toys were, what vinyl customizing was to a lot of people, just because it's not something well known in this area. And it kind of eventually kind of run its course. I think in September or October, sales just started getting really bad. We couldn't get people out to the shows like we were, and I kind of had to make a decision because I knew toward the end of 2014 a lot of art opportunities were coming up in 2015. So I kind of had to make the decision to either continue the shop, you know, even though it wasn't doing well, or focus on art. And I kind of had to make the hard decision of shutting the shop down at the end of this year. So at the end of December, we shut down. But throughout that year, I mean, I met a lot of really cool artists and just the local community down there. It was really cool to see how they embraced it. I just wish it could have been a little bit better, so we could have grown it and possibly have gotten its own location out of the coffee shop and just a little bit more exposure. But like I said, I kind of had to make the decision, either focus on art or keep the shop open.
It sounds to me kind of you are basically creating a whole new scene, and I understand that you had some good crowds at some of your shows. Tell us about one of your favorite shows over there, and what seed you feel like you might have planted for that form of art and for your specific demographic that you've kind of were catering to in the future.
Right. Of course, my favorite had to be the Halloween show. We called it Mischief Night, and it was just a lot of Halloween-inspired art. We encouraged people to dress up. We had a DJ there and had a Halloween contest, and that for me was probably the best show. One, because Halloween's my favorite holiday, but just the whole vibe of that night. I think it was our biggest attended show as well. It was standing room. There were people waiting outside to kind of get in. So that for sure was the best show that I can think of there. I hope that it planted a seed of that kind of style being more accepted here in Greensboro. We had quite a few people come out, and they kind of not really turn their nose up at the artwork, but we had some that couldn't understand why some of the stuff was art. They're used to seeing realistic paintings of a field or a bowl of fruit or something like that, and that's what they were thinking art was like. But in places like New York and California, that type of artwork has been like deeply rooted in their art scene for decades, and I feel like why should we have to go there to experience that? I mean, I was wanting to kind of plant that seed myself and have that culture kind of grow here, so we wouldn't have to go to New York or California to experience. You could experience something like that here.
I feel like the demographic of the vinyl art especially is rooted, as we saw a little bit in the movie The Beautiful Losers. It's the graph scene, it's the skateboarding scene, and we live in the deep South, and there's not kids skateboarding around our town and putting tags up everywhere. It's pretty policed here as far as I think that goes. But
Yeah.
Everything that starts either out west or in the big cities end up migrating at some point. Trickling down in all other aspects once it gets more mainstream. But I think people are just again fearful of what they don't know. Kind of they're used to like you said, walking downtown, looking in art galleries, seeing a price tag, $1,200 for a 24 by 36 canvas of either a photograph or a painting or something that looks like your sixth grader brought home, and that's really discouraging. And I think people get really stuffy when it comes to art, and then they see something like vinyl toys and it's just so abstract to them they physically and literally can't wrap their head around it. But you go to a place like Portland, Oregon even, and right across from the Upper Playground store is I believe the Kid Robot store, or a store that sells tons of vinyl toys. And I remember my first time in there, and they had like these clear boxes of all these custom Nike high tops, and on this one window and then on the other window they had all their toys. And it was also like a clothing boutique and stuff too. But it was just super cool. I didn't get it the first few times I saw it. I'm not necessarily seated in that culture. But after you kind of get in any sort of niche like that, for me, I was always more in the custom jewelry, glass blowing world, and always appreciated that craft. Had a bunch of friends go into those crafts. But I feel like when you start appreciating one, you can kind of appreciate a little bit more in all of them.
Yeah, and I think too, working, kind of having that artwork exposed to more people. When I worked with the Eliza and the Greensboro Mural Project, I did a mural for them that was kind of a little bit different than a lot of the murals you see around here too, and I'm hoping that maybe that helped people not complain about it too much. Because the mural I did was of some monsters and creatures and stuff, and it's a little more kind of graffiti-ish than a lot of the other murals are. A lot of murals in the South and, I mean, here in Greensboro are all mostly portraying some kind of history of the area that it's in or a famous person or something like that. And I've always been avid about those murals are fine and good, but I think color and just bright, crazy stuff is going to bring more people down and just have them pay more attention to what's going on than that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that slowly, we can get Greensboro to kind of loosen its hold a little bit and be a little more crazy, I guess.
What's the shoe store downtown? Social Status?
Social Status, yeah.
Is that right? From what I understand, I've heard from a few people, Social Status is one of the premier like shoe stores. I think it's like a pretty big deal for us to have that here, and it's interesting. I've lived downtown pretty much the whole time I've lived in Greensboro. I pass by it on a daily basis, and at least 2 or 3 times a week, early in the morning, I'll see a line down the street of people waiting in line, I guess, to get some new shoes. I've kind of, in listening to you all talking about vinyl toys and the more urban art and the kind of skateboard scene, and that's something that I've found really interesting. And you think about Social Status, you think about what you did with Menace Inc., you think about Dance from Above. Jack is of a subculture as well, with CFBG Records and vinyl records and being a vinyl DJ. It's interesting to think about. In a lot of ways, the subcultures are the groups that create the things that are so interesting. And that's kind of where Beautiful Losers, as Caleb mentioned, is so interesting, because these guys were kind of poster childs for the people that were just on the fringe of mainstream of these subcultures, whether it be skateboarding, whether it be Harmony Korine with his very realistic, kind of disturbing in a sense, wild videography, cinematography that I think is really beautiful in a certain sense. And it's really cool to think what they were able to do. And so then we talk about all these pieces that we have here. And I think it's easy for people that don't put all the pieces together to be discouraged. But with us sitting in this room we all kind of represent a different piece of those subcultures. In watching The Beautiful Losers, you all were there. All three of you all were there last Wednesday. What do you see in that film and with that group of individuals that kind of led to that success that maybe we need to take on more here, maybe we could learn from?
I think kind of how they went about it, as far as they were all free spirits. They kind of didn't care whether what they were doing caught on or not. They were just doing what they thought was fun. And I kind of see us having to do that here in Greensboro. I mean, we kind of have to go against the norm, just like you would really anywhere else. It's the Greensboro is kind of set in its ways, and I think it's going to take us kind of just doing things that we think are fun, doing them, and not really caring if the city of Greensboro latches on and thinks it's cool and tries to support it. I think it would be, it'd be great to have your city backing you like that, but I think it'll take a lot of time. And if we do these things that we think are fun, and I think it will just have that progression as it did in Beautiful Losers. It just gets the momentum going, and to the point where you can't stop it, and it just breeds that culture.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like, instead of DIY culture, which it definitely was, it's do it for yourself.
Yeah.
DIFY. Because if you're doing it for yourself, you're going to put your whole heart and soul into it and make it the best it can be. And in the end, if no one else buys into it, you still had a good time, like you said.
Yeah.
So I think that has rubbed off in a lot of ways. I mean, I know that's what I used to do when I used to book shows on a regular basis. It was bands that I wanted to see, and if other people wanted to come and see it, and it's kind of what we're doing with Dance from Above. It's ultimately who we want to see, and we hope that others want to see them as well. But again, I wouldn't say it's selfish. I mean, it's sort of more, I don't know, self-guided exposure.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, I mean, nobody's going to work at it harder than you.
Yeah.
And if you try to rely on other people to make your vision come true, I mean, you find a lot of people along the way that are great to help you and jump onto your cause and everything. But, unless you are just passionate about it, and like you said, if do it yourself, nobody's going to do it better and put more passion into it than yourself. And as long as you believe in what you're doing, hopefully it'll kind of snowball into something bigger.
I think for me the most powerful part of that movie was the part that directly relates to the question I have with my photography all the time, and I think it comes up with anybody that puts their art out there, and it's how much of it do you do for yourself? How much of yourself do you give away to pay your bills? Is there a line that you cross? Is there a line that you don't cross to make those things happen? But I think, what ultimately which the movie portrayed was that when they didn't sacrifice any of themselves, they were able to just push the ego and pride aside and just let that beautiful stream of conscious art kind of do its thing. And, a million people probably walk by their first open door galleries and just turn their nose up, walk by, but that right person latched at some point, and then after that the next person latched onto it, and then their grimy hole in the wall became this had this urban mystique to it, and then it became the cool place and had this cool hip factor, and it wasn't for them trying to be that. They didn't start that gallery being like, hey, we're going to keep middle management here all the time, and this is how the people in the front are going to act. This is how, this is the vibe we're going to make this place have. We're going to put neon lights here. We're going to have smoke machines here. They just put their own art themselves out there, and I think Jack hit it with Dance from Above. It's artists that, music-wise, that, our local DJs, Jack included, wants to bring, their inspirations, their vibe, and they feed off that, as the quote-unquote art coordinator or just person who tries to fill the walls with art. It's nice to see other visual artists coming together that don't get a lot of chances to display art in public, because it's a hard thing to do in this town. So, a lot of people know that at the end of the night, your stuff's not going to be bought by any means. You're lucky if it doesn't get beer spilled on it. But,
True.
It's cool. It's nice to an established, one of the oldest theaters in the state, for whatever it's worth, just to have a little piece of that. Just to have a little bit of yourself on display is a really cool feeling, Again, it's not for anybody else. I know the stuff that I printed personally for that show is all stuff that it'll probably stay rolled in my poster rolls for the next decade. It was just cool stuff that I just wanted people to see, for those to add to that atmosphere. I wanted people to walk into that place, and if anything, when they walked out, even if they didn't get to meet me, they took a little bit of me home with them. And I feel like all the artists that perform throughout the evening or put their stuff up kind of feel that way. They don't care that they get anything out of that night. It was never for the money for any of the artists involved. It was never about the profits. It was just, God, did they get anything extra out of tonight? It was just hoping that people went home with some different feeling than just, the 2 a.m. last call. That's at least the vibe that I really get out of those events.
I mean, I definitely remember, and even being friends with all you guys, kind of the first time that I walked into Dance from Above. I actually had a friend in town, and I had something going on that night, and so I came in a little bit later, and I remember just having like a huge smile on my face the whole night. I think I was with Jack. I think I kept like kind of telling you, dude, this is really cool. I was just very excited, and it kept reminding me, and it's funny because Danny said, this is coming from inspiration that I got from Brooklyn, and it just kept reminding me of these kind of parties that I would go to in Brooklyn. I went to one of my good friends up there is a fashion designer, and I got invited to her show at Williamsburg Fashion Week. And I lived in New York, and I was an intern for a fashion editor of a mainstream magazine. So I've been to the traditional New York Fashion Week. Then going to this Williamsburg Fashion Week, it was in a warehouse. They had a projection up on the wall that was actually showing what was going on at the stage. It had a DJ going and a lot of really cool bands. And the fashion designers weren't running people down a traditional runway. They were actually putting together a performance. So all the models were dancing. The whole thing was choreographed. And it's really interesting to me because you have these fashion designers who have put so much time into these designs and putting this together. And like you all said, they were willing to contribute that into something that, if nothing else, everyone just had a really good time. Maybe people didn't even really notice, the details that person would have spent hours and hours and long nights just like slaving over and worrying about every little detail, because they see all those specific inch by inch details. Same thing with a furniture designer that I made friends with in Durham, and him just basically telling me that he actually cuts down the wood himself. He lets it cure in his workshop, and he'll spend hours and hours and hours on the tiniest adjoinment or using there's a Japanese style. If you start to get a crack in wood, it's like a butterfly that you can put down in the wood, and just so many unique details that people pay attention to. And I'm sure both of you all know what I'm talking about with being artists, photographers, and painters, and Jack with your craft and vinyl. And I think that part of the reason why The Beautiful Losers was able to really take hold the way it did was, going back and forth to New York. Once I kind of came back to Greensboro and really got into working with Create Your City, I started kind of asking people questions, just trying to, in a sense, bottle up what they had going on there. And I was sitting around with a few people, and I asked them, why New York? Like, out of everywhere that you could be, what is it about New York that makes you want to be here? Is it, all the cultural opportunities? Is it? And they just basically said, you never know what you're going to experience on a day-to-day basis. Every day is a surprise, and I just love being a part of something bigger than myself, because there's so many people around me doing so many great things that I just love every day being surprised by the talent of my friends. And so I think that is what we're starting to develop here, because my favorite part about what I'm able to do with Create Your City is all the interesting people like you guys that I've been able to meet and interact with, learn from, things that people in a general sense, I think a big part of it is that life just, you get busy, you forget about things outside of your just everyday going to work. You've got kids, you've got a dog, you've got to pay bills, you've got a house to keep clean, you've got swim practice, etc., etc. And it's just about, like you all said, whether you're an artist and you're actually creating these things or you're organizing these events, I don't think that it's necessarily that people don't care. I think that sometimes in society as a whole, I think that we forget to just take a deep breath and just realize that, we're lucky on a daily basis to live the way that we do, and just sometimes, forget about the stress and forget about the mundane and just appreciate something that, you can just kind of release yourself in and just enjoy without all the pressure. So.
Yeah, and the things you were talking about, you said you asked the people from New York what it was about New York that made them want to stay in New York, and pretty much all those things are happening here. It's just that New York is New York, and it's made itself famous and popular for those things, and people kind of expect it out of New York. But here in Greensboro, some of those same things are going on, of course, at a smaller scale, but I just think what's happening in New York could happen here. It's just, it's at, like I said, a smaller scale, and we just got to get people used to those things. And I don't know what the magic formula for that is, but I mean, I other than New York being New York and having 100 times more people, I don't really see a lot of things that they're doing there that either aren't happening here or can't happen here. We just need to make it.
I think that it and I've heard a few people say this, actually Kane, the owner of Natty Greens, was one of the first people to verbalize this to me, and for it to really make sense. He basically just said that we have to get people to fall back in love with Greensboro. How many people have you all heard basically kind of laugh off the fact that Greensboro is a city? And I think that's a big part of it. When you go to a city that really has a thriving art scene, a thriving culture, the people that live there are proud of it. And they become, every citizen becomes a spokesperson, a marketer for that place. And that's why it grows exponentially. That's why I understand that music in Texas was more centered around Houston, and somehow Austin, who was just a fraction of the size of Houston, was able to, through, I know Willie Nelson played a big part, and through Austin City Limits and the growth of South by Southwest. But I'm pretty sure, and I don't know too many people from Austin, but I'm sure if I met someone from Austin, they would have nothing but positive things to say about it. And it's hard-pressed sometimes to find people saying positive things about Greensboro. And, we've talked about the different pockets of culture, and just we do have a lot of really cool neighborhoods, and I think that's what makes Greensboro unique. I feel like I've traveled a good amount, and I've seen a lot of North Carolina, and Charlotte has a good sense of neighborhoods, and I think that's what makes Charlotte interesting. What makes Atlanta interesting is you can go from one neighborhood to another and you find a completely different culture, and I think Greensboro has that. So I guess the question is, it's not necessarily that New York's New York. I think the people there have had more time, and a lot of people, probably grow up their whole lives wanting to live there, so they love it, and they want other people to know they love it, and they appreciate everything about it, and they want to support it and celebrate it. And maybe it is just, we talked about on the last podcast live music and population barriers. Maybe it is just something that we all just have to be patient with and just understand that maybe that's just where we are in the process, and what we're doing step by step is building towards something larger. But we know that we've made progress. We can all see that, whether people appreciate that or not. So I think we're moving towards that. I think it just involves getting other people to buy into that and to love Greensboro as much as we do.
I'm curious, with that whole being in the Deep South barrier almost, or challenge, let's call it challenge. Jeff, have you heard of any negative feedback from anyone about the mural?
Not really. I mean, I had a few people, they would stop in the middle of Friendly and get out of their car real quick and come up and say, thanks for putting this here. It's different. It's what we need. The only negative kind of thing I had was somebody came up that lived near there and was asking about it, and because it was kind of creature monster based, the guy was like, I understand Halloween's coming up and this is for Halloween, but what's going to come up? What are you going to paint after Halloween? And I said, well, no, this has nothing to do with Halloween at all. It is kind of how I interpreted the theme of the mural. And he was just like, oh, well, I figured since it was creatures, it was about Halloween. I just want to know what you guys are doing, because I have to look at this wall every day. And then he kind of turned around and walked off. But that was really the only negative thing. And a lot of younger people were the ones that were saying a lot of positive things, because that's who's going to be inheriting the city, and they're wanting to see more of that type of stuff. So for them to be open, I think it may go along with what Ryan said. We may just have to wait. You keep doing what we're doing, but wait and let that younger generation kind of get out of college and everything, and kind of start putting their roots in too, and help change it with some of us older guys and gals and everything. But yeah, I mean, I just think kind of what we were talking about, the different areas of Greensboro. I think to be a small city like we are, and we do have these pockets of different things going on, I think to be as a small city, those areas kind of tend to stick to themselves when they do things too. I don't think there's enough of the community as a whole coming together and accepting these things and kind of backing them. I think it's like one area of Greensboro does their thing and everybody stays there, while this end of Greensboro does their thing and those people come to that. But there's not a lot of things that joins the community as a whole. Is like, a couple of big events a year that would just bring everybody together, not just to celebrate the north side of Greensboro or the west side of Greensboro. Just, we're too small of a city, I think, to have everybody stay in their little corner of the city. We all need to come together and build the city up like New York. Everybody from just about every part of New York is proud and happy of New York. So I think we kind of need to have more of that happening too.
Yeah, I'm reminded last night we were walking around right around here on Tate Street and looking at these old telephone poles with staples, thousands of staples from old flyers, and it's actually not allowed anymore.
Oh, wow.
If you notice, there's not flyers on telephone poles anymore around here.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the representatives from the neighborhood association tear down flyers right after they're put up.
Wow.
Because they think it's a blemish
or
whatever. And it also sort of reminds me of the other big controversy that happened recently with the noise ordinance downtown, trying to create some sort of music scene. And then you have basically a handful of people, one person in particular, who had the money and influence to have it shut down, basically have, a noise ordinance put in place that really hinders the ability for live music to thrive downtown. And it can be frustrating when you have, a small group of individuals that isn't the old school and is not, like you said, like we've been talking about, open to change and difference, So anyway.
Thinking about what you were saying in regards to the staples on the post on Tate Street and kind of leaving behind like almost like a graveyard of what was. It's shows a change in or a mixture of cultures, if you will, in terms of there's an older demographic and a younger demographic. And you think about, even when we're talking about New York, Brooklyn and Manhattan are so different. There's you can get a different vibe in both places. And I think Greensboro has a varied in demographic between downtown and even the College Hill, Westerwood, Tate Street. The word hipster might get thrown around here and there. And then you think about something that's even a little bit more forward in contemplating that what is sort of holding Greensboro back and making it interesting at the same time is that UNCG is obviously one of the biggest influencers on culture in Greensboro, and it's a large arts school. And so you can really sense that. You see the creativity everywhere, but you don't see as many job opportunities. You don't see as strong of an entrepreneurial community. And, we've seen that kind of clash happening with the university kind of trying to start gearing more towards sports with the new rec center and turn the old rec center into more of an athletics facility so that they can get more scholarships. And I don't know if they're looking at a football team down the road or not, but you have to have like a good mixture. It's almost not good to go too far either way, to have too much of a buttoned up kind of business community or too much of the art scene, because if you don't have a mixture of people learning to work together and kind of finding that happy medium of how to exist as a city, then you just kind of, I think, get stuck in a certain way. And so that's kind of what you see in a downtown. And I think that's in the old days. I think that's what downtowns are. And I think that's why cities that have prominent downtowns, if you will, with quotation marks around it, that's where people from all different walks of life just are naturally going to, rub elbows together. So, we've kind of talked about the art scene and the different neighborhoods and such. And I think the biggest part is bringing those people together. So even with music, we have such a wide variety of music. If we're going to do live music, it's like Jeff said, maybe we are too small to really get divided up that much. So how do we just bridge that gap and do something that appeals to everybody,
Well, no, I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about some of these alternative events as far as art, bringing art to maybe not your normal crowd, or bringing it to people that maybe not wouldn't attend an art show just because. Put something like live painting into the mix. People want to see that because it's happening on the spot and it's different. But then you also we talked about the challenge of people not being willing to go to something different. So
I think as far as business is concerned, a place like New York, it's very concentrated, In one building, one high rise, you can have a small population of people that can cover a whole economic basis, from store clerks to athletes to doctors to law professionals to policemen to healthcare workers, everything. You can have everything under the sun in not even a block, one building, and that level of competition, in a sense, I think drives the people around you just unknowingly. You don't have to know the people around you to be pushed by them. If you took Greensboro and squished it into a small space, you would have the Korean pockets of Market Street downtown. You would have, where I live off the Patterson-Holden area, the Hispanic pockets that run the El Mercaditos and the different Latino grocery stores over in that area. There's, Banh Mi on High Point Road is one of the best Vietnamese sandwich shops probably in the state, if not southeast. It's amazing. We have all these different And I think the pockets that we haven't hit on yet are cultural too. They're not just scene oriented. I think they're definitely cultural based. But if you squished them all together, the ones that would thrive would be the best ones. There would be only room for so many, I don't know what you'd call it, Tex-Mex or American-style Mexican cuisines. You wouldn't just have them in existence because of one needed to be way down Battleground to feed that part of the population, and another one needs to be way down East Market to feed that part of the population. People are literally in New York. They're not going based on locale because everything's so close. They're just going to the best of the best, And if you're not serving your best product, food-wise anyway, you're not going to stay in business, And I think that's how a place like Brooklyn, for example, gets like a reputation for its art, and other certain pockets get reputation for their food or music or whatnot, is because those scenes in themselves drive that sort of fierce competition, but yet it also drives that community. I think people are helping, that inspiration's kind of pushing each other to the next bounds, and like we saw in Beautiful Losers, when you have a group of people kind of inherently subconsciously pushing each other while you're just kind of freely creating your own work, knowing that person next to you is not trying to bite your style, not trying to rip you off, not trying to win a I don't want to say grant, but get a bid or a contract over you. You're just putting yourself out there with the person next to you patting on your back, helping pay your rent space, hopefully together at the end of the month. But at the end of the day, even for that sector, it's just about the product or the quality of whatever's being produced. In Jeff's case, especially visually.
Yeah, that's kind of a thing I've always wondered about Greensboro, is how it's like one thing kind of catches on, and then 20 more of the exact same thing just pops up out of nowhere. Like, I mean, when I first moved here to Greensboro, there was like one or two frozen yogurt places, and that was kind of new to the area. And then people saw how good it was doing, and now there's one like every other block, and the
Next
same
to the
with
Jimmy John's.
Yeah. And that's something that I've never understood, why
Freaky fast, because there's a million of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why would we allow 5 yogurt shops in one area? Like, I mean, to me, it just kind of overpopulates, and you spread the people so thin that like not all those companies can survive because there's 5 of them in the same area. So you're spreading everybody going to those 5 different locations instead of having like one or two good ones. And even like driving down Battleground now, it's like the new thing is mattress places. There's like 4 places selling mattresses in a 2-block radius on Battleground. Like, it just blows my mind how one thing will catch on and then we'll just explode with them until they all put each other out of business.
Maybe that's the problem. Everybody's sleeping.
I mean,
I guess so.
For example, I just drove across the country, and visually, aesthetically, there's parts of the country that feel like you enjoy driving through more than others. But a part of it is, I think, when you hit the middle heart of the country and in the Midwest especially, it's not the long stretches that bring you down. And for me, it was what was offered for the quality of life, and seeing what these corporate giants had done to this small town after small town after small town, because all you're passing is these empty big box stores. But then right next to these empty big box stores are other big box stores that have been built right after those other big box stores went out of business. And then the only places to eat off any of these exits, traditional, McDonald's, Hardee's, or Carl Jr., or whatever they are out west, and it's the same 3 or 4 fast food chains at every place. The gas station, travel centers, or whatever. They have their Dairy Queen. Get your Blizzard every 400 miles. But it really, like, I can't tell you how many conversations me and my girlfriend had about, well, why is there not Subway, because it's not a healthy alternative, but why there's not some sort of convenient eating spot at these places for, like, truckers. Hundreds, thousands of truckers drive these stretches of 70, 64, every day. And the only options they have are to put these awful ingredients in their body over and over and over and over again, you know, and it's all just it compiles into just how you feel, what you enjoy. And I know this is just the weirdest example, but like, that's the guy I want at my art show, ultimately. A guy that's been busting his ass all week, whether it be in the road or at home or whatever, you know, at the end of the week can go and do something that's like culturally uplifting, that can take him out of himself for even that couple hours and just like live vicariously through somebody who's been busting their ass for that same amount of time. So he can just sit back for a second and just be like, oh man, there's some, like, you just relaxation, you know, in a sense, in a form. Yeah, is there going to be a lot of burly truckers at my next art show? Probably not.
Only burly truckers.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
You can't get in unless
Yeah.
unless you drive a
You have
truck.
some people dressing up.
But there's a lot of things, you know, and I think that's just on a wide spectrum. You know, in Greensboro, why is there 100 effing Applebee's, Chili's, Hams, and they all serve the same exact food? You know, not knocking sports bars. People in this area love sports culture. You know, I get it. But at the same time, those places thrive. Those places always make hella profits, where small places maybe trying to live a little more on the edge, you know, can't really push their unique product as much because these other places, for some reason, are just staying full every weeknight, let alone Friday, Saturday, you know, and there's nothing different, there's nothing special, there's nothing, and that's what I think appeals to these people, is they're not being taken out of their comfort zone. They can go any one of these places and get their steak well done. They can get their mashed potatoes with extra cheese and butter. They can get their salad bar, you know, they can get full, not one time, but 3 times before they leave, you know.
Yep.
It's such a weird dynamic, and I don't know, you know, I think a part of menu writing is trying to figure out that dynamic. But then again, what do you sacrifice to yourself? You know, you want to talk about the New York example. I tried to bring, you know, frog legs to a menu once. Sold the hell out of them in the mountains to people that have lived in more cultured cities. They eat them up, you know. In the deep South, people eat them up.
Mm-hmm.
You take them to New York, people eat them up. Here, people look at it like it's the craziest thing in the world, you know, and then you ask the question, well, why can New York do it and why can't we? It was because people here aren't taking those, like, risks or chances, or it's not culturally a thing, you know, like Jeff has hit a few times tonight.
I can say frog legs are delicious.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've not tried them, and I don't know if I plan on ever doing it. But I trust your judgment on that.
I think that, and maybe you can touch on this, something that I've started to notice is when I was in high school, it seemed like Thai food was kind of reaching a little bit out of your comfort zone. And now you'll go into a Vietnamese restaurant and you'll see construction workers on their break from lunch eating there. And, you know, Greensboro has a strong ethnic restaurant scene. And that's a question that I've asked myself, and I've often wondered what you were actually discussing in terms of these small towns and all these chain restaurants. And I guess that goes back to the same kind of reason why there is top 40 music and why there's indie music, because, you know, there's a reason why even someone that's like Jack may lip sync to Taylor Swift riding down the road in his car.
Never.
Because, I mean, it is
Only on Tuesdays.
easy to
Only on
like.
Tuesdays.
So it is weird. How do you break out of that? And I think it all goes back to that question of, you know, are people willing to take a chance with their money? And that goes back to economy. I mean, maybe when you're more comfortable in your economic situation, you know, the job market's better, you know that you're secure and you're able to look a little bit outside of, you don't think about, oh, this $10, I need to make sure that I'm full because I need this $10. If you're able to be a little bit more comfortable in your financial situation, maybe you're able to take a chance and be like, okay, I'm going to try this because I want to try it and it's exciting and it's new, but if I don't like it, you know, I'll try again next time. But so, I mean, I think there's a little bit of that happens in small towns too, and I think that's why you've got to have these basic restaurants. There's just not enough people to have variety in those places, so that's why you end up with that really basic kind of middle-of-the-road diner food.
Well, I think everyone in this room is going to continue to push the envelope. And I mean, that's kind of a generic saying, but to offer the alternative. And I know for myself, I refuse to eat at chains. Absolutely refuse to eat at chains. Refuse to, if it's the only thing that exists, I will go to a grocery store and buy something from the deli. So I mean, that's just speaking on behalf of myself. But again, I think I can speak for everyone in this room that everyone in here is going to continue to do what we do to give you not the mainstream.
I think, Ryan, you hit a very good point with the construction worker eating the Thai special for lunch. And it comes where these cultures are meeting at a place where it's not even a thought about discussion. In Thailand, Vietnam, where all this food's coming from, they have been just like classical French cuisine. They have been taking the worst cuts of meat proteins, for example, over generations and learning how to create these aromatically just wonderful, especially like pho, for example, or pho, technically speaking. It's just aromatically strong, heavy on the herbs, the spices, and they've taken these cuts that at one point were thought unedible by people, just throwaways, but because of economical circumstances, were forced to figure out ways to cook these products. And over the time that we haven't had here as a country, as you can definitely see with the wastefulness of American cuisine, or what I would call American style cuisine, that these cultures have created these dishes, these noodle dishes, these broth soup like dishes that you can get full on, that leave you feeling good, that don't drain you. Then a lot of it doesn't have dairy, doesn't have gluten. The things that all the hooplas around. You look at these cultures that live really simply, that cook really simply. A lot of that stuff, all these refined sugars, a lot of these processed foods. It's not in their diets. You might not order some of the more exotic cuts of meat on these menus, but at the end of the day, when you leave most of these ethnic restaurants, Tex-Mex being excluded from this, more than likely you're going to feel pretty good about yourself. You haven't consumed a lot of bad foreign, what your body would treat as toxin foods. I don't know. The one thing I carry pretty strongly with food is that it's the only thing that you really put in your body. That moves you from point A to point B. It wakes you up. It helps you go to sleep. It controls all of your neurological responses. What you eat is who you are. And I think, for me, Vietnamese food and Thai dishes are some of my favorite because of just how rejuvenated I feel after eating some of those wholesome broths, and I think people subconsciously go back to something that makes them feel good, and it's not that false sugar high, or it's not that weird full feeling you get after stuffing yourself with 4 cheesy sour cream covered enchiladas. It's different than that. It's people that never thought they'd stick basil leaves in their mouth or bunch full of cilantro. They're eating these things that at one point they never thought they would, and they might not even know why, but other people are doing it, and so it must be good, so they're going to do it too.
I think it's a great conversation. I look forward to continuing this on our social media platforms. I hope both Jeff and Caleb will maybe contribute some more inside thoughts in a blog form, and we'll keep these conversations going. And it's what this is all about: getting the conversation started, getting people talking and thinking in a different light. And we thank you both for being here, and look forward to catching up with you again on the show, and to continue to participate and attend the events and projects that you both are working on.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. So
once again, we invite you all to continue to participate with us at Create Your City at CreateYrCty. And you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Google+, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for listening, everybody.